Good evening, everybody. We're wrapping it up here tonight. We'll be brief. I know we're all just standing between you and dinner, but we have some food for thought with two illustrious guests here. They're both pioneers in their own way. We'd never had a Muslim woman win a gold medal for America before. A bronze medal. She still won an Olympic medal, which is one more than either of us have, right? And Theo Epstein, at the time he took over the Boston Red Sox in 2002, was the youngest general manager in baseball history at 28 years old. So I want to ask both of you, I'll start with you. The notion of doing something that you hadn't seen anyone like yourself do before, and to take over and to succeed when there wasn't a model for either your gender or your faith or your age to pattern yourself after. How did you create this space for you when there was no path clearly delineated?
Well, you're looking at me, so I guess I'll start. I think that there's a lot of powers that be. There's a lot that has to happen in order for it to work, because there's a lot of pushback. And I wouldn't have been able to see myself and envision myself in that space had it not been for one of my mentors, Peter Westbrook. He's a 6-time Olympian, half African-American, half Japanese guy who started a nonprofit in New York City. And through his nonprofit, he has about 250 minority children learning how to fence every Saturday morning in New York City. And I was told about this nonprofit by chance. Someone said, you know, there's black people who fence in New York City. To me, and I said, whoa, that's offensive. But I was like, I Googled, like, you know, black people in New York City fencing, because I wanted to see it for myself. And seeing all these athletes, not just who look like me, but also those who were, you know, on Olympic teams winning world medals, I had no idea that world was out there, that it was a possibility for me as like a young kid from Jersey. So it allowed me to see myself in that space.
You know, at the time, I didn't think too much of you getting that job. I was in my early 30s. Like, yeah, he's qualified. And looking back now that I'm in my 40s, 28?
Yeah, I was young.
What made you think you were doing? How did you know you were doing this? You're on the right track.
I was scared. I'll be honest. Yeah, it was intimidating going from completely anonymous to all of a sudden in Boston, the GM of the Red Sox is a public figure and subject of a lot of criticism and scrutiny as well. So. For me, I think, you know, admitting I was a little bit scared was important, and then I had tremendous mentorship. My mentor, Kevin Towers, had taken me under his wing through my 20s to help me get me ready to that point. I got some great advice from my dad. He said, "Be bold, you know, not be afraid to fail, not be afraid to get embarrassed, try new things. That's why you're there." And then I had a great community around me. I wasn't alone. I had a lot of 20-somethings working with me who I really trusted and empowered, and we worked hard together to make things work. And if I was completely alone, I don't think it would have worked at all.
You also had some input from your twin brother, who really wanted you to take advantage of your position to do things in the community. But you told me backstage, you had a baseball team to run first, and you had to establish yourself. I wonder, and as you've gone on in your career, how you balance the sense of obligation to, first of all, your bosses and your fan base to win games, how you balance that with your sense of obligation to the community to really have your organization be a part of the city at large? Sure.
Well, I think you have to do a good job, first of all. So the work comes first, and you have to be dedicated and put in the time and the focus to succeed, because if you don't succeed, you're not going to have the job and the platform to do some good disappears in the first place. When I got the job with the Red Sox, my brother called to congratulate me, and I thought he was just happy for me, but he's a social worker, and he said, great, now we can start a foundation and do all these good things. I have this nonprofit that needs help and these projects we have to do. And I told him, oh, that's a great idea, and that's exactly what I want to get to, but I need at least a year. I need to get my feet on the ground. I need to make sure I belong here and can do a good job. And so in my second year, we were real fortunate. We won the World Series, and then that year we launched our foundation. And I think it's been the most rewarding part, you know, of coming up on 28 years in baseball now. Just having the ability to see the impact you can make. I mean, there's so many people who are young people, old people, who are passionate about baseball, and that makes all the athletes role models. That makes our words important. And so when you can take some of that interest and, yes, some of those resources and redirect it to nonprofit groups who are doing the most important work in our society, it seems to make sports more than just the bread and circus of society, but making a lasting impact. And so, but for that, we'd probably question our jobs a little bit, but the chance to make a real impact makes it really worthwhile.
You had input from someone that you met at the mall right after the 2012 Olympics. Describe how that helped propel you into a 2016 Olympian, and I guess your sense of commitment that you felt from this young girl that you met, if you could tell that story.
Yeah, so I was at a mall with a friend, and we met a young girl who approached me and wanted an autograph. She said, are you that Olympic fencer? And at that time, I just missed the 2012 Olympic team, and I had a whole spiel that I had run down, and I said to people like, oh, well, I'm not an Olympian, but I am a fencer. And before I could say anything, the friend who was with me said, oh, she's actually not an Olympian. And I was like, okay, this person's not a friend. But I remember, for me, it was...
Let her live the illusion, right?
In that moment, I kind of realized that I did, in fact, want to embark on this journey of qualifying for an Olympic team. No one had ever sat me down to say, this is how you do it, this is what you need to do, this is the qualification process, because I was still very new to the sport, very new to the world circuit. I had only been on the team for a year when the Olympic qualification process started, and as an African-American athlete in a predominantly white sport, I didn't have the same experiences as my teammates. I didn't start at the age of 12 traveling to Europe to go to World Cups. I have working class parents. I didn't even know that opportunity existed, to be honest. And in being an adult, embarking on this world circuit, kind of starting behind the curve, wanting to represent my country at the highest level of sport, I really had to grind. So I was very myopic in my focus beginning in 2012. I had 4 years to make it happen, and to be honest, it all starts from a dream. Because there's a lot of forces that aren't accepting of change. They don't want to see the sport change. And change to them is sometimes, being someone from a different club that's not theirs. And if the people in your club and in your area happen to all look like you and they happen to all be white, that means that someone like me, there's no space for me to exist. So there's a lot of not you just challenging the norm that exists within the sport, but also challenging yourself, seeing yourself in a space where, like you said, it hasn't been done before. So you have to really convince yourself that it's possible. And for me, having athletes like Serena and Venus, having a profound and prolific athlete like Muhammad Ali, who to me has showed me how to not just be my best within sport and on the field of play, but also outside of sport, be a champion for the people, which to me has always been most important.
You talked about going against... You were in a traditional sport with a lot of norms, and Theo, baseball would fall into that category as well. How and in what way does baseball need to adapt this mindset and update its mindset of the unwritten rules and the way the game is played when those rules kind of came into play before the sport was open to the community at large? So what way does baseball need to make changes?
Yeah, baseball is probably the most traditional of the four major sports and the most slow to change and the most demographically homogeneous probably. And even in the way the game is played, there's this expectation a lot of times that you won't express yourself freely. You won't celebrate even a home run because it might show up the other team, which is a little bit ridiculous when you think about it. But I do sense...
They're hard to come by, right?
Yeah, they are. I do sense great change in the game. We have some progressive leadership from the commissioner's office, and you probably recently saw the new commercial with Ken Griffey celebrating bat flips and celebrating free expression. And I think empowering our young players who are they're developing into the young men that they're going to be, empowering them to be themselves is not just the right thing to do, but it's also good business. It produces results. Our manager here in Chicago, Joe Madden, has been extremely successful with young players because he's taken these century-old norms about how young players should act and how they should dress. There's a dress code on the road where young players, even just up from the minor leagues, who might not even own a suit, have to wear a suit and tie on the road at all times. And these norms just make them uncomfortable. And so it typically takes 3 to 4 years for a young player to adjust to life in the big leagues and start to relax and be himself and perform. So Joe took those norms and deconstructed them. And he told our young players, if you want to fit in, all you have to do is be yourself and have fun and express yourself. So the dress code went from suit and tie on the road to, if you think you look hot, wear it. And just a really small point, but you could just see our young players excel, and we had some of the quickest assimilations into excellent careers by young players that have been seen in the big leagues in a long time because of that.
Ibtihaj, you might have started your career trying to succeed for yourself and see where you could push the boundaries for yourself and people who look like you, but you really embraced representing your country. You wear American flag on your mask when you fence. You had an Instagram post of you literally hugging the Statue of Liberty, a drawing of you hugging the Statue of Liberty.
That wasn't of me. That was a repost.
Okay.
Yeah. But she had on hijab and she had brown skin, so everyone thought that was me. Yeah. Not me.
But we've seen a photograph. I know it was you in the picture with the American flag celebrating your victory. This is a country that hasn't always embraced people like you, and yet you've embraced it and represent it. Speak to that duality and what makes you proud to wear those colors and to represent this country.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's so multidimensional. It's a loaded question. As an African American, this is the only country that I know. And I feel like I am breaking down norms. I'm shattering, a lot of barriers and just existing as myself. I don't have to say much, on the podium as an American wearing hijab. I'm challenging those stereotypes that exist in media, that exist in Hollywood about my community. And I challenge each of you today to don't continue to consume things that depict Muslims in a bad light because they aren't representative. They aren't representative of me, of my family, of anyone that I know. And the Muslim community is like any other religious community. We are vast and abundant. There's a lot of us. We don't all look like me. We're certainly not all Arab, definitely not oppressed. I choose to wear hijab. I have a voice. You follow me on social media, so you know. And I feel like America is all that I know. I feel very close to it. And to have the opportunity to represent my country at the highest level of sport was the greatest gift I've ever been given. And when you talk about this journey through sport and it being for me, it's never felt like it was for me, to be honest. I've always had that feeling inside that I was fighting for anyone who's ever been told no, anyone who's ever been made to feel as if, a space wasn't made for them. And I've always felt like that in fencing, and I feel like it's changing. It's slow, especially within the team. I still feel like it's a slow process, but we'll get there, and hopefully it starts with the next generation.
You mentioned the hijab. A lot of the stories that talk about you focus on that. You compete with it. Nike's even made special edition hijab workout attire. Do you feel like that obscures your personality and aspects of your humanity, or is it reflective? Is that discussion and the hijab really reflect who you are and what you want to represent, the role model that you want to be?
Well, I mean, I think that there's also a greater conversation about religion and sports, right? And do the two kind of blend at any point? And for some athletes, they're very much so one and the same. I feel like me wearing hijab and observing hijab is a way for me to be conscious of my faith and to kind of lead my life God conscious and to remember to be a good person. And anyone that you ask who covers, who wears, Muslim women who wear hijab, everyone's answer is going to be different. But for me, my faith in having this belief of things happen the way that they're supposed to, never wanting to let fear precede me, is why I sit with you today. If I was not on the Olympic team, I wouldn't be here, right? So I know that my faith is what guided me. I had some really tough moments in my career where I feel like I was ostracized as an athlete, mostly for being different. And I know that without having that faith and believing in myself and being my own biggest cheerleader, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have come out on top. So there's something to be said for just supporting yourself when others are really trying to break you, but also, I know for me, I think that comes from being just a God-conscious person.
This is what fascinates me about sports, is the different discussions and directions that it can lead. Theo, what's your response to the stick to sports crowd, or the shut up and dribble, or shut up and bunt, whatever the sport might be? What's your response to that? And also, what are some of the restrictions that people might not realize that you're under? That maybe you want to speak out on things, but there are a lot of factors, there are a lot of different people that you need to appease in order to keep your job.
Right. I mean, the shut up and dribble perspective is so ridiculous, it's almost irrelevant. It's deep. It threatens to dehumanize athletes, which is, where I think the best results come from humanizing athletes and recognizing, no matter how stats-based you might be, that the game is played by men and women with their own backgrounds and perspectives and thoughts and feelings, and they should be expressed to reach one's potential. But I think the shut up and dribble crowd really tends to play off of fear. Fear that an opinion expressed might be shouted down by half of the fan base, or trolls on Twitter might silence an athlete, or management or ownership might not approve, and it can threaten a career. We had a meeting in spring training this year just to let our players know that we didn't want them to shut up and, I guess in this case, throw and shut up and hit. We wanted them to be themselves, and if they had opinions, to express them, to be smart about it, to be respectful to their teammates, more than anything, to engage in conversation, inside the clubhouse to start, and to get to know the different perspectives that exist with the other 24 men around them, and to engage in topics. There was the Parkland school shooting during spring training. One of our players, Anthony Rizzo, had graduated from there, and so of course they're going to be talking about issues like gun control in the clubhouse. So there were perspectives on both sides, but why shouldn't they be voiced? Why should you then leave it insular inside the clubhouse? Of course, as a human being and an athlete, you should use your platform and express them. And so our players, many of them have been brave and done so, but other sports like basketball seem to have an environment that's more conducive to players speaking out. And I think you'll see that change in baseball in the coming years.
And to your point, Theo, I think that from the athlete perspective, there's a fear of the backlash, right? And there's a lot of athletes who want to speak out, but also don't know exactly how to do it. I've co-founded Athletes for Impact, which helps professional athletes in particular mobilize those of us who want to speak on social issues, who want to essentially be more engaged within our communities, maybe even on a national level or local level, have the opportunity now with this nonprofit.
Where can people find out more about that?
Athletes for Impact. You can Google it.
And Theo, we've got a minute left. I'll give you a chance to plug your program, Careers as Sports Executives, CASE.
Well, we just recognize that one area of our industry that's not diverse enough at all is the front office, and a lot of internships and other opportunities were going towards people who already had connections or already had privilege. So we started a program actually in 2 high schools not far from here, Kenwood Academy and Hyde Park, with 25 high school sophomores and juniors who like sports but didn't quite understand the breadth of opportunities out there in the front office or in sports journalism and management. And we had an 8-session curriculum, just kind of trying to expand their minds and help them understand that you don't need to become an NBA player in order to make a career in sports. And it was really successful, and something we're going to try to scale up and continue to try to help make front offices as diverse as our country is.
We are right on time. Thank you to our 2 panelists. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, guys.